I want to talk about justice advocacy and what exactly is the vision with justice advocacy. So when you go through our website and you look down, you'll see that there's a portal to justice advocacy. It's also under it's one of our missions here at BG2G. And if you go to www.justiceadvocacyusa.com, you'll also go straight to our justice advocacy page. And in it, you'll see that we got like a little promo video regarding the discipleship program, and you're able to register. And you'll also see that we have links to to the U.S. Constitution, to the Declaration of Independence, to the Civil Rights Act, and all of the constitutions of every individual state. So that's something that I recently learned, was that like each state has their own individual constitution. But then we have a U.S. Constitution. So all the documents are here for your use and personal study. We have the BG2G public case log and Justice Diaries blog spot, where I'll be kind of sharing my ideas and kind of where my head is at as I pursue justice advocacy. So what exactly is justice advocacy? Justice advocacy is what I say. It's like I'm on a mission to raise up an army of pro se litigants. So a pro se litigant is essentially a non-lawyer, someone who did not go to law school and was not ever like licensed or is not currently licensed by under the bar association. So the reason that justice advocacy is so important, I believe, today is because as it stands here in America, it seems that unless you can afford a lawyer, which are very expensive to have, you're just not entitled to justice. And that is not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. Coming from the rise of what happened with George Floyd and that tragedy, and we saw our entire nation, lamenting and screaming, no justice, no peace. And this is a reality. There is no justice here in America unless you can afford a lawyer. And so I want to actually challenge that, because we have U.S. constitutional rights to have justice. We, the people, in the formation of this nation and in the establishment of our Constitution, we created a judicial branch for the purpose of redressing or addressing the grievances of the people. And so there's rules currently, even today, that you can file a lawsuit and things like that. There has to be in every state a provision or a procedure where a person who is not represented by an attorney can petition and push through a case in the court. Now, what's been happening is that the court and judges today really don't even want to listen to a non-represented party. They're kind of, I don't know, stuck up or whatever. They just don't want to deal with the people. They want to deal with their own, they want to deal with people who know how to speak the legal language, because it is a language all on its own. The The legal dictionary standard is known as the Black's Law Dictionary. So that is something that if you're going to pursue justice advocacy, you might want to get one. There's also kind of like a free, outdated, earlier version of the Black's Law Dictionary free online, which is also, an amazing resource. But the idea behind justice advocacy essentially is to equip pro se litigants with enough legal language, legal terminology, and kind of teamwork coaching and support to help you navigate and advocate through the court system. Now, this is what I mean by advocacy. There is a thing called declaratory relief. When a judge gives a judgment, it essentially is law. It establishes what is known as a precedent. And so when you have all these lawyers, when crimes, injustices between the police and civilians, and then the police officers have union representatives and union lawyers that fight for them. What's been happening is that there's an uneven engagement of the judicial process that is one-sided. You have state officials and workers who have representation by default, paid by union, paid by taxpayer money, and they have access to all this, where we the people, we maybe have a public defender who is overburdened and cannot adequately represent anyone because of his workload, or you have to go pro se if in a civil suit or dish up a lot of money. So this essentially, what it has established is an uneven address of grievances, where we the people, our voice is not heard, and then these police officers or whatever, their voice is heard, and the laws are established to recognize their concerns, and we the people are ignored. And so what justice advocacy aims to do is to essentially equip the people with the legal terminology, because this is something else that's so important. The reason why there is a legal language, it's because there cannot be room for misinterpretation. Okay. If you have a contract that says with someone, I want 10 cool shirts, okay, by the end of March, and you get 10 shirts with a whole bunch of holes in them, and you're like, dude, this isn't what I want. I wanted cool shirts that people are gonna like and they're gonna be popular and all this. And the other person, well, I thought you wanted a lot of air to go through and to be cold, so I made sure they had a lot of holes in it. That word cool is an ambiguous term. It has multiple meanings in our language, and so it cannot effectively be used unless it is defined within the contract itself. It cannot be used because it's too ambiguous. And so what happens is, if we the people are addressing the court and we don't know how to speak their language, they get frustrated and we are not communicating effectively. So with justice advocacy, we want to meet that gap. The other thing is, there is this concept of declaratory relief. In my journey of learning advocacy through the legislative branch, what I witnessed was a lot of people, organizations rallying together, presenting data, facts, amazing arguments before a legislative body whose primary concern is, are you their constituent? And how many of their constituents do you have in your team? This is just not effective. Like, it's just not even, I can't believe this is how advocacy has been running for so long. I believe that the court is the designated governmental body where we can present genuine arguments, facts, and expect a logical response. That is what judges get paid for, to be wise, to be able to discern and articulate what is just, fair, and equitable. And so also the court process is heavily regulated to incorporate, like, it's just documented. A lot of procedures like hearings, they are transcribed by law everywhere. A lot of the legislative process is done between closed doors, individuals not recorded, not accountable, except for their voting. And that is not, and then mainstream media or whatever happens to get covered in the news gets exposed. But much of what happens in the legislative process and the advocacy efforts, if you don't have media coverage, gets suppressed or doesn't get addressed at all. And that is just not acceptable. In the court system, everything is documented. And so if you dot your I's and cross your T's, I believe that we, the people, can be heard and we can present arguments with facts, logically, to correct and reform, bring about the necessary systemic reform that our government needs. So the other part of justice advocacy that I feel is very important to understand and recognize as to what part of what has our legal system dysfunctional and also kind of bound is that lawyers are bound by rules via their bar, their licensure, which actually suppresses their ability to freely address the court. So they have to address the court with case law and certain protocols and procedures where if they don't do that, they can be penalized, their case can be thrown out the court, so many consequences. So part of why they get paid what they get paid is because there's so much at stake should they make the slightest error. And so we, the people, have and still retain freedom of speech. And so where a lawyer to a huge degree is somewhat gagged in their ability to address the situation because they are mandated to bring in case law, we the people can actually speak common sense into the system and have judges rule on what is more reasonable. And that is also why I feel it's so necessary today for justice advocacy and justice advocates across the US to rise up and take our position to help meaningful change. Now, the power behind judicial declarations literally is amazing. If, for example, bail reform, cash bail reform. Most of the people understand that cash bail is an unjust system that penalizes the poor, imprisons them, and of course, the privileged, wealthy get to bail out their kids, when they're in jail and they don't have a record and they don't do time and things like that. So that is a very unjust. It affects disproportionately Black and brown and Latinx people disproportionately, and there are very clear arguments that it's just an unjust process. Well, judicial power, literally, even though there are laws in the legislative that were brought forth, accepted, and they've been in the books for years and years, if we the people present a good enough argument before a court and ask the right legal question, and a judge actually says that cash bail is an unlawful or unjust law, it literally gets deleted. It becomes illegal to continue. Okay, that is absolutely powerful. Then the legislative branch has to fill in the blanks, and find other ways and means to get money than exploiting the poor. So that's just kind of an example of the power behind declaratory relief, and when judges have a precedent. Now, I go into great detail, much more detail, in a 2-hour training course that you can sign up via the website, and I can definitely answer more questions. But that, in a nutshell, is what justice advocacy is intending to do. And we the people just need to know that the government here in the US, our government, what sets us apart from the rest of the world is that our government was established by the authority of the people. And so it rests upon the people to rise up, upon us, regular citizens, not the government, to rise up and demand and guide government into correcting what has been just them running amok. So I believe that justice advocacy, an army of pro se litigants to rise up and take their position, to present their arguments in courts all at the state level, is the army that we need for today. It's a means of addressing the injustices that plague our nation in a nonviolent way, and but with passion and action, and it's an aggressive, offensive action that we can take. So I look forward to seeing you. Bless you. I'm Noemi Soto with BG2G. See you soon.